There is a rather peculiar fact. Some people are willing to pay a high price to eat a creature with a hard shell, black eyes, long antennae, and a multitude of small legs. That creature is the shrimp. Yet, when a creature with a remarkably similar appearance lands on the dinner table, many people will immediately swat it dead or throw it outside. That creature is the grasshopper. What is puzzling is that grasshoppers feed on plants, reproduce rapidly, are rich in protein, and can easily be farmed in large quantities. So why is the shrimp considered a delicacy, while the grasshopper is dismissed as a mere pest? Comment 1 if you would dare to eat a grasshopper. Comment 0 if the mere sight of its legs gives you goosebumps. Because the real difference might not lie in the taste, it lies within the human brain itself. Shrimp are not insects. Shrimp belong to the crustacean group, whereas grasshoppers belong to the insect class. However, both are arthropods. They possess an exoskeleton, jointed legs, and long antennae, and they must shed their old shells to continue growing. One swims underwater, the other hops on land. But imagine the shrimp isn't sitting on a dinner plate. Instead, it is scurrying rapidly up your wall. A hard, shiny shell, tiny legs moving constantly, long antennae probing everything ahead. Would you still find it appetizing? You probably wouldn't reach for the dipping sauce. You would grab a slipper. This shows that whether something seems appetizing or repulsive depends on more than just the animal's appearance. It also depends on where we encounter it. Shrimp appear in restaurants, grasshoppers appear in fields or fly into our homes. Yet, when it comes to their potential as food, grasshoppers are not as inferior as many people think. One thing needs to be clarified. People do, in fact, eat grasshoppers and locusts. In many parts of Asia, Africa, and Latin America, they have been part of traditional diets for generations. They can be roasted, fried, grilled, or ground into powder, and they can certainly be farmed. They do not require vast pastures. They do not need large bodies of water. They do not take years to reach maturity. Many species are also highly efficient at converting feed into body mass. They can provide protein, fat, and various minerals. In theory, grasshoppers possess almost all the qualities needed to become a mainstream food source. They reproduce easily. They require little space. They are nutritious. So why are they rarely found in supermarkets? Because an edible creature is not necessarily accepted by humans as food. To make it onto the dinner table, grasshoppers must overcome a hurdle far greater than the challenge of farming them. That hurdle is the feeling of disgust. And notably, this feeling is not something we are born with. It is largely shaped by what we see and learn from a young age. Most of us never see a shrimp while it is alive at the bottom of a pond or the sea. By the time we see it, it has usually been cleaned, chilled, or cooked. In other words, the shrimp has already been transformed into food before we encounter it. Grasshoppers are different. We see them hopping in the fields, clinging to leaves, devouring crops, or suddenly flying into our homes. Consequently, our brains often associate grasshoppers with pests, destruction, and creatures that need to be driven away. That is why someone might eat a cake made from insect flour, but refuse a grasshopper that still has its legs and wings intact. When the animal's recognizable form disappears, the sense of revulsion often diminishes too. This suggests that the issue is not always about the taste. It lies in the fact that we can still recognize the animal on the plate. So if grasshoppers were raised in clean conditions, ground into powder, and processed into a dish where the legs were no longer visible, would you try it? Comment 1 if your answer is yes. Comment 0 if knowing the ingredients would still make you refuse. But the feeling of revulsion is only half the story. The other half involves the massive system that has turned shrimp into a familiar food. Shrimp did not become a popular foodstuff overnight. Humans have spent generations building an entire industry around them. Behind a bag of supermarket shrimp lies a complex network of hatcheries, farms, processing plants, cold storage facilities, and transportation systems. Shrimp can be deheaded, peeled, deveined, and frozen. Shoppers no longer see a creature with multiple legs and long antennae. Instead, they see a clean, tender piece of meat that is easy to prepare. Grasshoppers lack such a large-scale system in most parts of the world. A single grasshopper is also quite small. To create a substantial meal, one must harvest and process a vast number of them. Even though they are easy to farm, they still require cleaning, processing, packaging, and safety checks. Wild-caught grasshoppers may have been exposed to pesticides, so one cannot simply catch them in any random field and eat them. If sold widely, they would need to be farmed under clean conditions and carry allergen labels, just like many other foods. Yet the biggest challenge remains the consumer. Without significant buyer demand, businesses are reluctant to invest. Without convenient products available, consumers are even less inclined to give them a try. In contrast, shrimp benefit from an established industry and generations of ingrained habits. Children grow up watching adults eat shrimp, so they naturally view it as a standard food item. Grasshoppers have yet to enter that cycle in most cultures. Place a child in front of two plates. If, from a young age, they frequently see adults eating shrimp, they learn that shrimp is food. If they grow up in a community where grasshoppers are commonly roasted or fried, they might view grasshoppers as a normal dish. But if their entire childhood is spent watching adults spray, shoo away, or stomp on insects, it is unlikely they will consider them a delicacy in adulthood. That is the power of familiarity. In some places, grasshoppers are a delicacy. Elsewhere, the mere sight of one on a plate is enough to make someone lose their appetite. It is not because human bodies differ between these places. Rather, it is because each culture teaches its people a different list of animals deemed acceptable for the dinner table. In some places, people eat snails. In others, they see only a slimy creature. In some places, people eat horse meat. In others, horses are viewed as companions, and the thought of eating them never arises. Nature creates animals, but humans decide which ones are food, which are pets, and which are pests. So why is shrimp a delicacy while grasshoppers repulse so many people? It is not because grasshoppers are inedible. It is not because they lack nutritional value. Nor is it because they cannot be farmed. Shrimp simply benefits from an established industry and generations of habit that have made it a familiar food. Our brains have categorized shrimp as food. Grasshoppers, on the other hand, are often categorized as pests. Biologically, that boundary is not as clear-cut as we might think. Yet, in the human mind, it is powerful enough to transform one multi-legged creature into an expensive delicacy, while turning another into something we swat with a slipper. Perhaps we don't dislike grasshoppers because they taste bad. Maybe we simply never gave them a chance to become a meal. Comment 1 if you believe grasshoppers could become a common food source in the future. Comment 0 if you think most people will always view them as mere pests. And subscribe to the channel to explore more of the strange boundaries between animals and food. After all, nature didn't label shrimp as a delicacy and grasshoppers as terrifying. Humans did that.